I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the moving van parked across the street. I whispered to myself, my heart tightening as I watched Madison, my son Lucas's wife, giving instructions to two movers with an ease that sent chills down my spine. I had planned to leave town for the weekend to attend a charity event in Boston, leaving my house quiet and empty, the perfect opportunity, it seemed, for her plan to unfold. I set down the kettle I had been using to warm my tea, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the wall clock, each sound anchoring me to the reality that this was happening in my own home. I had always prided myself on knowing the people closest to me, yet Madison had found a way to move unseen, to manipulate timing and circumstance with a precision that suggested forethought and intent. I leaned against the kitchen counter, feeling the familiar grooves of the granite under my fingers, and allowed myself a moment to breathe deeply, counting to 10, inhaling the cool air through the slightly open window, letting the early spring breeze brush against my face. Every detail was vivid. The way she adjusted her hair, the way she held her phone as she coordinated the arrival of her parents, the casual confidence that masked the audacity of her plan. I could see the bags neatly stacked in the corner of the garage, waiting to be transported, and my mind raced with the possibilities of how far this could go if left unchecked. The dining room, which had hosted countless family dinners, now felt like a stage set for a scheme that I could not ignore. I picked up my tea again, letting the warmth seep into my palms, and sipped slowly, reminding myself to remain calm, to observe and gather information before acting. I recalled the quiet moments of my life in this house, the paintings Lucas had hung as a boy, the windows that let in the afternoon sun just so, and how each memory seemed to now illuminate the contrast between what was mine and what Madison intended to claim. The air was thick with anticipation, the scent of brewed tea mingling with the faint perfume that Madison had always favored, a floral note that seemed to signal her presence even in the smallest detail. I moved quietly to the front hall, peeking through the blinds without drawing attention, and noted how her parents approached, their expressions polite but unaware that they were stepping into a carefully orchestrated trap. Every movement, every gesture, became a part of the story I was constructing in my mind, each observation a thread to weave into a strategy that would protect not only my home, but my dignity and the respect I deserved. I imagined the conversations they might have, the assumptions they would make, and I mentally rehearsed the ways I could expose the plan without confrontation, without anger, allowing the evidence to speak for itself. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished hardwood floors, highlighting the path from the front door to the living room, and I could see the contrast between the peaceful familiarity of the space and the intrusion that was imminent. My heart rate settled slightly as I reminded myself that I had been in control of my life for decades, that my understanding of timing, patience, and subtlety was a skill honed over many years. I pictured Madison arranging furniture, her parents commenting on how comfortable everything looked, unaware that I was already steps ahead, monitoring every detail. I rehearsed my approach in silence, the words forming in my mind, precise and unhurried, ensuring that when the time came, my presence would be undeniable and the evidence irrefutable. I returned to the kitchen, poured another cup of tea, and took my seat at the table, allowing my eyes to drift to the window and watch, hidden yet fully aware. The plan I was crafting in my mind was not one of vengeance, but of careful exposure, a way to allow Madison's own actions to reveal her intentions. I thought about Lucas, my son, and how he trusted both of us, unaware that a quiet storm was brewing within the walls of his childhood home. The minutes stretched, each one thick with the tension of observation, each one a step closer to understanding the full extent of Madison's audacity. I could see the subtle expressions, the slight pauses, the way her parents followed instructions. Without question, all signs of the underlying plan that had motivated this intrusion. I held my teacup loosely, letting the porcelain warmth remind me of the life I had built, the memories contained within each room, and the responsibility I carried to protect it. I considered the best moment to intervene, the most effective way to let the trap unfold naturally, allowing her to reveal her intentions without me having to raise my voice or resort to confrontation. The light shifted in the late afternoon, casting a golden hue across the entryway, emphasizing the ordinary beauty of a house that was being tested by extraordinary intentions. I reminded myself that patience was my ally, silence my weapon, and observation my tool. Madison and her parents moved through the rooms, arranging items, discussing placement, and all the while unaware that I was meticulously noting each step, each word, each subtle hint that would later serve as the evidence I needed. I allowed a faint smile to touch my lips, not out of malice, but as acknowledgement of the quiet power of preparation, the ability to transform awareness into strategy. The afternoon unfolded in slow motion, each moment charged with anticipation, and I felt the steady certainty of knowing that when the time came, the truth would reveal itself without my direct interference. The kettle hissed softly as I reheated the tea, the sound a comforting reminder of routine and control amidst the potential chaos. I sipped again, watching, listening, and allowing the narrative of their actions to solidify in my mind, each detail a building block for the confrontation that would inevitably arrive. I reflected on the years spent in this house, the care with which I maintained it, and the subtle lessons of timing and patience that life had instilled in me. Madison believed she had the advantage, that absence would give her opportunity, but I had learned long ago that true control lies not in presence alone, but in the quiet accumulation of knowledge and understanding. As the sun dipped lower, elongating shadows across the floors, I felt a growing calm, the assurance that my response would be precise, deliberate, and entirely under my control. I reminded myself that anger was unnecessary, that visibility and evidence would speak louder than any words, and that the plan I had set in motion would protect the home, preserve the dignity, and reveal the intentions of those who sought to exploit absence. Each creak of the floorboards, each whispered instruction from Madison, became part of the story I was compiling, a record that would ensure clarity, fairness, and justice. I took a final slow sip of tea, set the cup down, and allowed my eyes to wander over the rooms, noting the placement of every item, the position of every bag, and the interactions unfolding before me. The day stretched toward evening, and I felt the quiet power of observation settling into resolve. Madison and her parents continued unaware, and I, Eleanor, prepared silently for the moment when the trap would be revealed, confident that awareness, patience, and precise timing would ensure that the truth came to light and that my home, my sanctuary, would remain firmly in my hands. The afternoon light shifted, brushing softly across the living room where Madison and her parents moved cautiously, arranging boxes and furniture as if the house had always belonged to them. Eleanor watched from the shadows of the hallway, her presence unnoticed, her eyes scanning each interaction, absorbing every detail with the calm focus she had cultivated over decades. She sipped her tea slowly, the warmth grounding her as she reflected on the subtle patterns she had observed in Madison's behavior over the past months, each instance reinforcing the meticulousness and audacity of her plan. Eleanor noticed the way Madison's father adjusted a picture frame slightly crooked and how Madison's mother offered opinions with gentle insistence, unaware that every action was being catalogued. The house, filled with the light scent of spring through the open windows, felt alive with tension, a quiet suspense that Eleanor allowed to settle fully into her awareness. She considered the measurements, the spacing, the placement of each chair and table, all elements of the home that she knew intimately, yet now seemed invaded with calculated intent. Each step she took within her observation point was deliberate, unhurried, allowing her to remain hidden while fully engaged with the unfolding scenario. Eleanor reflected on her relationship with Lucas, her son, recalling the trust he had placed in both her and Madison, and how that trust, though given with love, had created the perfect space for Madison to overreach. She held no anger, only a focused determination to let the situation reveal itself, to allow Madison's own actions to create the clarity that confrontation alone could not provide. The afternoon grew deeper, and the sounds of footsteps on polished hardwood and quiet exchanges drifted toward her, reinforcing the reality that she was witnessing the full extent of an intrusion that had been months in planning. Eleanor took note of the subtle hesitations, the pauses before responses, the small gestures of reassurance between Madison and her parents, all signs of calculated behavior rather than spontaneous decisions. The golden hue of sunlight along the window sills highlighted the contrast between Eleanor's serene observation and the busy activity of those who believed they held the advantage. Eleanor allowed herself to imagine the likely assumptions being made by Madison, how confidence and familiarity could create a false sense of security, and she prepared to utilize every opportunity that arose from this overconfidence. She observed the placement of each item being carried in, the sequence of unpacking, the tone of conversations, and the subtle leadership Madison exhibited, noting all as potential evidence and leverage for the eventual revelation. Eleanor's mind worked methodically, translating each movement, each whispered instruction, into a map of intent and consequence, ensuring that every detail could later be traced and demonstrated without ambiguity. She considered the rhythm of her own heartbeat, using it to maintain focus, letting patience guide her actions while the house became a stage for an unspoken drama. The time passed slowly, each minute thick with observation, each moment providing more insight into the strategy Madison had designed, and Eleanor remained motionless, an observer fully present, yet invisible. She reflected briefly on the broader context of her life in the home, the accumulation of memories, traditions, and routines that had shaped the space into a sanctuary that was now under threat, and this reflection only strengthened her resolve to act strategically rather than impulsively. Eleanor allowed herself small, controlled breaths, letting the warmth of the tea and the quiet of the house reinforce her sense of authority over the situation despite her current absence in direct action. Every misalignment of a frame, every correction, every polite assertion from Madison's parents became a piece of the unfolding story that Eleanor could interpret and use. The subtle shift in lighting, the movement of shadows along the furniture, the quiet click of a door closing. Each detail was absorbed, catalogued, and folded into the mental narrative Eleanor constructed. She maintained a steady calm, knowing that her restraint and patience would be the tools through which the truth would emerge clearly. As Madison moved into the corner of the room to direct her parents, Eleanor noted the way her instructions were given, the assumed authority, and the confidence that came from believing no one was observing. Eleanor, sitting quietly at a small table near the window, allowed herself a faint, almost imperceptible smile, recognizing the advantage she held by simply watching and waiting, allowing the events to naturally reveal intentions. She considered the timing, the sequence of actions, and how each interaction built upon the last, creating a tableau that would speak volumes once fully exposed. The late afternoon sunlight began to soften, casting elongated shadows that stretched across the floors, subtly marking the passage of time and reinforcing Eleanor's awareness of each moment. Every gesture, every exchange, every shift in position became a recorded moment in Eleanor's mind, each one a silent witness to the unfolding plan, yet entirely unacknowledged by those executing it. Eleanor sipped her tea once more, feeling the quiet warmth in her hands, grounding her in the awareness that patience was her greatest ally, that observation without interference could achieve more than confrontation alone. The home, filled with the soft creaks and groans of settling wood, became a quiet repository for the accumulating evidence, every sound noted, every motion considered for its implication. Eleanor allowed herself to drift briefly into the contemplation of the eventual revelation, imagining how each piece of evidence, once compiled, would create an unassailable case for her understanding of Madison's plan. She moved slightly, adjusting her seating to gain a better vantage, ensuring her observation remained uninterrupted, her attention unwavering. The golden tones of evening light deepened, shadows stretching and merging, providing both concealment and clarity as Eleanor maintained her vigil, fully aware of the unfolding dynamics, fully engaged in the careful recording of intent and action. She reflected on her own calm, the discipline that allowed her to witness without reacting, to absorb without judgment, and to prepare for a measured response that would maintain dignity, assert control, and reveal the truth with undeniable clarity. Every sound, every word, every step was meticulously noted, creating a complete mental record of the unfolding events, and Eleanor felt a growing assurance that when the moment arrived, her careful preparation would allow for an outcome that was both precise and complete, protecting her home, her sanctuary, and the respect she had earned over decades. The house remained alive with subtle motion, Eleanor's presence unnoticed yet commanding, as she continued to monitor, assess, and catalog every detail with the patience and foresight that had become her signature approach to challenges of this nature. Knowing that the eventual moment of revelation would be entirely under her control and executed with a calm precision that left no room for dispute or misunderstanding. The late afternoon light began to fade, casting soft shadows across the living room where Madison and her parents moved with careful deliberation, still unaware that every action was being observed. Eleanor remained quietly stationed near the window, her tea cooling in the cup beside her, each sip a reminder to maintain composure and patience. She noted the meticulous way Madison positioned a small bookshelf, aligning it precisely with the other furniture, her movements confident, deliberate, yet revealing a sense of entitlement Eleanor had learned to recognize over the years. The parents followed, placing their bags and personal items as if they were invited guests, blissfully unaware that the home they were entering belonged to Eleanor. Each subtle interaction was a piece of evidence, catalogued silently in Eleanor's mind, every glance, every nod, every slight hesitation carefully observed. Eleanor reflected on how Lucas trusted both her and Madison, a trust that had created the perfect environment for Madison's plan to unfold. She did not feel anger, only a quiet, measured resolve, understanding that the best course was to observe and let the unfolding events provide clarity and proof. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the faint creak of the floorboards, and the distant sound of a car passing outside were all part of the symphony of observation, grounding Eleanor in the reality of the situation. She allowed her eyes to follow Madison as she moved from room to room, directing her parents with casual authority, unaware that Eleanor was mentally mapping each step, each motion, each subtle sign of manipulation. Eleanor's focus was sharp, her mind calculating the sequence of actions, the potential missteps, and the most effective moment to assert control, all without raising her voice or revealing her presence. She considered the afternoon sun's progression, how it illuminated different angles of the rooms, casting light on corners and surfaces, and how that light could later reveal details she intended to point out if needed. The quiet was punctuated by the occasional sound of a box being set down or a picture frame being adjusted, each noise recorded in Eleanor's mental narrative. She allowed herself a faint, controlled smile, knowing that the power of patience and observation was far greater than any immediate confrontation could achieve. Eleanor reflected briefly on the history of her home, the memories embedded in each room, the life she had built with Lucas, and the careful attention she had given to maintaining both the property and the family traditions that had grown around it. Every corner of the house, from the sunlit reading nook to the polished kitchen countertops, was familiar to her, yet the presence of Madison and her parents had introduced a subtle tension that Eleanor now harnessed as insight. She imagined the assumptions being made by Madison, how confidence could breed a false sense of security, and she planned to use that overconfidence to reveal the truth without escalation. Eleanor's awareness encompassed the interactions, the tone of voice, the spacing between individuals, and the unspoken dynamics that were unfolding. She recorded mentally the sequence of actions, ensuring that she would have a clear understanding of the plan in its entirety when the moment came to address it. The shadows lengthened, softening the room's edges, and Eleanor noted the movement of light across the floors, allowing her to track both the time and the progression of Madison's plan. Each sound of shifting furniture or quiet conversation became a clue, each step a testament to the intentions she had suspected and now witnessed directly. Eleanor remained still, her posture relaxed, but her senses fully engaged, allowing the events to play out while maintaining an internal map of the situation, her observations precise and comprehensive. She considered the small decisions Madison made, how each one reflected a pattern of behavior Eleanor had observed in previous encounters, and how those decisions would contribute to the overall narrative of intent. Eleanor sipped her tea slowly, the warmth reinforcing her calm and focus, her mind continuously translating observations into potential strategies and outcomes. She thought about Lucas and how he might perceive the events, knowing that any confrontation needed to be handled with clarity and undeniable evidence. The day continued to unfold, and Eleanor's quiet vigilance ensured that she absorbed every nuance, every subtle exchange, every misstep, or hint of overconfidence that could later be addressed. She moved slightly to adjust her view, ensuring that nothing was missed, that her observations remained uninterrupted, and that she maintained control over her understanding of the unfolding scenario. The atmosphere in the house remained deceptively calm, yet Eleanor's awareness of the potential consequences and her meticulous tracking of the actions of Madison and her parents created a tension that was invisible to them, but palpable to her. Eleanor contemplated the careful orchestration of her eventual response, knowing that timing, precision, and clarity would be key to revealing intentions and restoring order to her home. She reflected on the discipline and patience she had cultivated over a lifetime, recognizing that these qualities were her greatest assets in managing the situation. The golden light of late afternoon gradually faded into the soft hues of evening, and Eleanor continued her silent watch, fully confident that the careful accumulation of knowledge and understanding would allow her to address the intrusion effectively, preserving both her home and the dignity she had maintained throughout her life. Every detail, every subtle action, every interaction was catalogued meticulously, creating a mental record that Eleanor could rely upon completely, ensuring that when the time came to act, her response would be precise, deliberate, and wholly under her control, leaving no doubt about the truth of the intentions she had witnessed and the rightful claim she held over her home and her family's respect. The sun had dipped lower, spilling a soft amber glow across the hardwood floors, and Eleanor remained seated near the window, her gaze fixed on Madison and her parents as they continued their careful arrangements. Each movement, each gesture, revealed both confidence and the faintest hint of hesitation, a telltale sign of calculated planning that Eleanor had come to recognize over time. The living room, usually a place of warmth and family gathering, felt transformed into a testing ground for intentions and subtle power plays, and Eleanor observed quietly, letting the tension of unspoken motives fill the space. She noticed how Madison shifted from directing her parents to adjusting small decorative items, aligning cushions on the sofa and straightening frames, all with the ease of someone who believed the environment was under their control. Eleanor's mind catalogued every detail, from the subtle tones in conversation to the careful placement of objects, creating a full mental record of the unfolding scenario. She considered the sequence of actions and the underlying purpose behind each, recognizing the patterns that indicated deliberate strategy rather than mere happenstance. The gentle breeze from the slightly opened window brushed against her face, carrying with it the sense of spring and the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee from the kitchen, grounding her in a calm awareness that contrasted with the silent intensity of observation. Eleanor reflected on the years spent in this home, the traditions nurtured, and the memories created with Lucas, understanding that these elements formed the foundation of her awareness and her right to protect the space. She sipped her tea slowly, the warmth in her hands reinforcing the patience and focus she had cultivated, reminding her that careful observation often held greater power than direct action. Madison continued her movements with a sense of purpose, her parents assisting with polite attentiveness, yet Eleanor could discern the subtle undercurrents of overconfidence and assumption, indicators of the very audacity that would later expose the intentions in full clarity. Each soft step on the polished floors, each quiet exchange of words, each adjustment of furniture became a point of data in Eleanor's mind, allowing her to anticipate the next moves and to understand the full extent of the plan without ever revealing herself. The late afternoon light shifted gradually, casting long shadows and emphasizing the paths through the rooms, highlighting every placement and adjustment with a natural clarity that Eleanor noted silently. She allowed herself a measured smile, not from amusement, but from recognition of the advantage that patience and careful attention provided, understanding that Madison's confidence would work in Eleanor's favor when the time came. Eleanor reflected on the nuances of human behavior, on the ways assumptions and small gestures often spoke, louder than words, and on how the subtle assertion of control could be both protective and revealing. She moved slightly in her seat to adjust her perspective, ensuring that every angle was visible every interaction observed, every indication of intent recorded. The light continued to fade, softening edges and deepening shadows, as Eleanor considered the psychological landscape of the house, the layers of understanding, experience, and anticipation that gave her insight into the unfolding scenario. She noted the interplay between Madison and her parents, the confidence in directives, and the reliance on their compliance, each element reinforcing Eleanor's understanding of the plan and its potential vulnerabilities. Eleanor remained completely still, yet fully present, allowing the minutes to pass in a state of quiet vigilance, each one reinforcing her awareness, focus, and strategic advantage. She considered how the environment, the timing, and the subtle orchestration of behaviors all contributed to the narrative that was revealing itself, a narrative that she was carefully documenting in her mind. Every shift of furniture, every adjustment of decorative items, every hushed conversation became part of the story, providing a foundation for Eleanor to act with clarity and precision when the moment arrived. She sipped her tea once more, feeling the warmth and the grounding effect of routine, allowing the familiar taste to center her focus and reinforce her calm patience. Eleanor imagined the eventual moment of exposure, how the evidence accumulated through careful observation would be undeniable, and how her strategic patience would ensure that the truth was clear to all involved without the need for unnecessary confrontation. The shadows stretched across the rooms, merging with the soft evening light, creating a visual map of the house that Eleanor held fully in her awareness. Each corner, each surface, each movement by Madison and her parents was noted and interpreted, forming a complete understanding of the situation that only Eleanor could possess. She felt a quiet satisfaction in the knowledge that careful observation, patience, and strategic insight would allow her to respond with clarity, maintaining control, dignity, and the integrity of her home. The house remained alive with the subtle hum of activity, yet Eleanor's calm vigilance transformed the ordinary evening into a carefully monitored environment, where each action taken by Madison and her parents was a step toward eventual revelation. Eleanor remained seated, her posture relaxed but her senses fully alert, allowing the plan she had envisioned in her mind to continue unfolding, each moment adding to the completeness of the story she would ultimately reveal. The interplay of light and shadow, the quiet movements, the unspoken intentions all converged in Eleanor's awareness, providing a perfect setting for observation and reflection, ensuring that when the time came, every detail would support her precise and deliberate response. The warmth of the tea, the fading light, and the measured rhythm of her own breathing reinforced Eleanor's focus, maintaining a state of poised attention as she silently catalogued the actions, intentions, and confidence of Madison and her parents, preparing for the moment when the careful watch would translate into understanding, clarity, and quiet resolution. Evening settled more firmly over the house, soft shadows stretching across the familiar rooms as Eleanor remained in her quiet observation post near the window, fully alert yet composed. Madison continued her careful arrangement of furniture, moving small pieces as if she were adjusting a scene in her mind, while her parents followed, carrying boxes and speaking in low tones, unaware of the scrutiny Eleanor had maintained for the better part of the day. Eleanor sipped her tea slowly, letting the warmth flow through her hands and focusing on the subtle cues that indicated both intention and character. Every gesture, every inflection in Madison's voice, every nod of agreement from her parents was absorbed with meticulous attention. Eleanor considered the implications of each action, noting how assumptions of control could be turned into clarity for her own strategy. She reflected on the history of her home, the memories embedded in each room, and the familiarity of the space that had allowed her to detect patterns and anticipate behaviors with precision. She observed how Madison paused occasionally, adjusting an item slightly differently than before, revealing small cracks in confidence that Eleanor catalogued silently, knowing that overconfidence often led to exposure. The warmth from the fading sun mingled with the soft scent of the spring air coming through the open windows, grounding Eleanor in calm vigilance as she traced each step and movement with an almost cinematic awareness. She thought about Lucas, her son, and the trust he placed in both her and Madison, and how this trust, once taken for granted, now served as a backdrop against which the subtle dynamics of manipulation became clear. Eleanor imagined the eventual sequence of explanations and the clarity that would emerge when the observed actions were revealed, each movement now serving as evidence in the quiet orchestration of understanding. She noted the casual tone of Madison's directions, the way her parents accepted them without hesitation, and how each micro-interaction reflected the underlying assumptions that Eleanor had long suspected. The light shifted gradually as dusk approached, the amber glow softening into cooler shades, and Eleanor continued to catalog each moment, ensuring that no detail, however minute, would be lost. Her calm was deliberate, a shield and a tool, allowing her to watch without interference while building a complete mental record of intentions, sequences, and potential outcomes. Each sound in the house, the soft click of a box being set down, the faint shuffle of shoes on hardwood, the murmur of discussion, was taken into account, each contributing to Eleanor's comprehensive understanding of the situation. She considered the psychological dynamics at play, the confidence Madison projected, the assumed compliance of her parents, and how each piece of the scenario could be used to reveal the truth without a single raised voice. Eleanor allowed herself a measured smile, recognizing that the patience, foresight, and careful observation she had cultivated over a lifetime provided her with a quiet power that would ensure clarity and fairness in response. She reflected on the subtle cues of body language, the pauses before speaking, the minute adjustments in position or placement, all forming a tapestry of intention that Eleanor could read with certainty. The house, filled with soft light and quiet motion, became a living record of action and reaction, each participant unwittingly contributing to the clarity Eleanor sought. She sipped her tea again, savoring the steady warmth as her mind mapped the interactions, timing, and spatial arrangements that had unfolded over the course of the afternoon and early evening. Eleanor knew that control in such situations was measured not by confrontation, but by awareness, and she continued to gather, interpret, and integrate each observation, ensuring that when the moment arrived, the truth would be self-evident. The subtle fading of light and the deepening shadows enhanced Eleanor's perspective, highlighting corners, angles, and movements that she had already mentally noted, providing her with a complete and unobstructed understanding of the unfolding plan. Every shift, every casual movement, every whispered instruction became part of the narrative she was silently constructing, a narrative that would reveal intentions and clarify the reality of the situation. Eleanor reflected on the power of quiet observation, the clarity it brought, and how the meticulous recording of each detail allowed for measured, precise action when necessary. The gentle hum of appliances, the faint creak of floorboards, and the occasional adjustment of furniture were all indicators of confidence and assumption, each one silently confirming Eleanor's assessment of the situation. She remained seated, poised and composed, the warmth of her tea, the fading light, and the quiet rhythm of the house reinforcing her focus and patience. Eleanor considered the eventual revelation, the way her careful observation would allow the truth to be evident without confrontation, and how the collected details would provide a full picture of intention and audacity. Each minute passed in deliberate silence, her attention unwavering, as the house continued to host the subtle but revealing actions of Madison and her parents. Eleanor allowed herself to imagine the clarity that would follow, the understanding that would emerge, and the precise timing she would employ to ensure that her home, her sanctuary, and her dignity remained intact. The house remained alive with the soft hum of activity, yet Eleanor's controlled presence dominated the awareness of the space, providing a careful balance between observation, understanding, and eventual exposure. Every motion, every conversation, every adjustment was silently recorded, each one a testament to intention and the unfolding dynamics, creating a complete mental archive for Eleanor to use when the time came. As the evening shadows deepened, Eleanor remained perfectly still yet fully aware, absorbing each detail with the patience, insight, and quiet strength that would allow her to respond with precision, clarity, and dignity, ensuring that the intentions she had observed would be revealed in their full measure without the need for confrontation or haste. The house had grown quieter as the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the soft glow of the lamps to fill the rooms with a gentle warmth. Eleanor remained seated in her usual spot near the window, her eyes following Madison and her parents as they moved through the living room and hallways, each step and motion recorded in her mind with deliberate care. The boxes, now partially unpacked, and the subtle rearrangement of furniture reflected the intent behind each action, a careful orchestration that Eleanor had anticipated yet observed with growing precision. She sipped her tea, the warmth grounding her and reinforcing the calm clarity that had guided her through the day, while each subtle sound, the shuffle of a bag, the click of a frame being adjusted, the faint murmur of conversation, was absorbed as part of the evidence she was gathering. Eleanor noted the interactions between Madison and her parents, the confident gestures, and the small corrections they made in response to suggestions, understanding that these details, though minor, revealed the assumptions and expectations that guided their behavior. She reflected on the broader patterns she had seen in Madison over the months, the calculated movements, the attention to perception, and the subtle manipulation of circumstances, all of which now played out under Eleanor's watchful eye. The soft evening light shifted and settled across the polished wood floors, illuminating the careful placements of objects and highlighting the paths through which Madison moved, providing Eleanor with a full visual understanding of the unfolding scenario. Eleanor considered the anticipation that must exist in Madison's mind, the confidence in her plan, and the likely expectation of success, and she let this overconfidence inform her own strategy, knowing that observation and patience would ultimately reveal the truth. Each adjustment, each placement, each direction given to her parents was catalogued meticulously, forming a clear picture of intention and ambition that Eleanor could later reference and reveal without confrontation. She allowed herself to shift slightly in her seat to gain a better perspective, ensuring that nothing was missed, and noting every expression, every inflection, every hesitant or confident gesture that might indicate the depth of planning behind the actions. Eleanor reflected on her own relationship with the house, the memories built within its walls, and the sense of ownership and understanding that came from years of care and attention, all of which enhanced her ability to interpret and anticipate the behavior she observed. She took another slow sip of tea, the warmth reinforcing her sense of focus, as she watched Madison direct her parents to arrange small decorative items, adjust frames, and test furniture placement, each movement seemingly casual but layered with intent. Human behavior, on how assumption and confidence could mask true intentions, and on how overconfidence often revealed vulnerability in ways that careful observation could exploit. Eleanor remained still yet fully engaged, allowing the scenario to unfold naturally, knowing that the patience and attention she applied would yield a precise understanding of the situation and eventually provide the means to assert control and reveal intentions. The light continued to fade, softening edges and shadows across the rooms, and Eleanor adjusted her vantage slightly to capture every nuance of placement, gesture, and interaction. She catalogued each moment internally, maintaining a full and detailed understanding of the unfolding plan, ensuring that when the time came, the truth of Madison's intentions would be apparent to all. Eleanor contemplated the careful orchestration of actions, the sequence of behaviors, and the subtle power dynamics at play, understanding that by observing without interference she retained the advantage, preserving clarity, calm, and authority over the situation. Each subtle misstep, each tiny hesitation, each moment of overconfidence from Madison was noted and added to Eleanor's mental record, forming a clear picture of intent and providing the foundation for a controlled and decisive response. She allowed herself a faint, almost imperceptible smile, recognizing the quiet power of patience, observation, and strategic understanding, and knowing that the events unfolding would ultimately reveal the reality of intentions without her needing to intervene prematurely. Eleanor continued to sip her tea, allowing the warmth and comfort to anchor her focus as she monitored the actions and interactions, translating each movement into insight, and ensuring that her awareness remained complete and uninterrupted. The ambient light softened further, and Eleanor noted the shift in tone, the subtleties in expressions, and the careful adjustments of position, all reinforcing the understanding that observation and patience could achieve clarity and resolution with minimal effort and maximum impact. Every sound, every gesture, every whispered instruction became part of the narrative Eleanor was constructing silently, a narrative that would provide a comprehensive understanding of intentions and plans when the right moment arrived. She remained seated, poised, and fully attentive, absorbing every detail with a sense of quiet control, knowing that the culmination of careful observation, patience, and awareness would ensure that truth, clarity, and order were restored in her home, with dignity and precision, leaving no ambiguity about the intentions she had witnessed and the rightful authority she held. The soft glow of the evening lights cast long shadows across the familiar rooms as Eleanor remained poised near the window, her gaze steady and unbroken. Madison and her parents continued their careful arrangement of the furniture, each step deliberate and coordinated, yet Eleanor observed the subtle nuances that revealed both intent and unspoken assumptions. The boxes were now partially emptied, the small decorative items rearranged, and the atmosphere carried the faint scent of spring air mingling with the warmth of the house. Eleanor's mind catalogued every detail, from the tilt of a picture frame to the placement of cushions on the sofa, understanding that each motion, each decision, reflected the underlying plan she had anticipated. She took slow sips of her tea, allowing the warmth to maintain her focus and clarity, while her thoughts traced the sequence of actions and the implications of each subtle gesture. Every whisper, every adjustment, every pause was noted with meticulous care, building a mental map of intent and consequence that would guide her in the moments to come. Eleanor reflected on the patterns of behavior she had observed in Madison over time, recognizing the calculated confidence and the faint traces of overestimation that now unfolded before her eyes. She considered the way Madison directed her parents, the ease with which they complied, and the small hesitations that occasionally betrayed uncertainty, each element contributing to the complete understanding Eleanor had been constructing throughout the afternoon. The ambient light shifted subtly, highlighting the polished floors, the arrangement of the room, and the careful placements of objects that now formed a tableau of observation and potential revelation. Eleanor adjusted her seating slightly to ensure an unobstructed view, allowing her to maintain a comprehensive perspective of the unfolding events, each detail enhancing her insight into the strategy Madison employed. The calmness in her own demeanor provided a contrast to the concentrated energy of the intruders, reinforcing Eleanor's awareness and control, and allowing her to mentally rehearse the steps she would take to ensure clarity and fairness when the appropriate moment arrived. She noted the interactions, the tones of voice, the precise movements, and how each small action contributed to the broader narrative of intention and assumption. Eleanor considered the history of the home, the care she had devoted to preserving its essence, and the quiet strength it provided her in understanding the patterns of behavior she observed. Each shift of a cushion, each placement of a decorative item, each soft exchange of words was meticulously logged in her mind, forming a complete record of the scenario that she had anticipated and monitored for hours. The light continued to fade, casting elongated shadows across the rooms and highlighting the careful orchestration of Madison's actions, reinforcing Eleanor's awareness of both the physical and psychological dimensions of the plan unfolding. She sipped her tea slowly, the warmth providing a grounding focus as she maintained her attention on every movement and interaction, translating each observation into actionable insight. Eleanor reflected on the interplay of confidence and assumption, the reliance on perceived advantage, and how the subtle overestimation of control could be leveraged to reveal truth and clarity without direct confrontation. Each creak of the floorboards, each soft adjustment, each murmur of conversation became part of the narrative Eleanor silently constructed, allowing her to anticipate the conclusions that would emerge when the scenario was fully realized. The evening continued to deepen, the shadows stretching across the familiar surfaces, and Eleanor remained fully attentive, recording, observing, and integrating each element into her understanding. She allowed herself a faint, controlled smile, acknowledging the quiet power of observation, patience, and strategic awareness that would ensure the unfolding events would reveal intent and provide clarity. Eleanor considered how the careful orchestration of her response, aligned with the evidence accumulated through the day, would allow her to act decisively and with precision, asserting control and understanding without confrontation. The atmosphere of the home remained charged with quiet activity, yet Eleanor's calm vigilance dominated the perception of the space, ensuring that every detail was accounted for and every intention discernible. She reflected on the importance of timing, perspective, and patience, understanding that the sequence of events, once fully realized, would present the truth clearly and unambiguously. Each subtle shift, each minor hesitation, each gesture of confidence or deference contributed to Eleanor's mental map, creating a comprehensive record that would guide her in ensuring that her home, her dignity, and her authority were maintained intact. The late evening light softened further, bathing the rooms in a gentle, diffused glow, and Eleanor remained completely still yet fully engaged, capturing every nuance of the unfolding plan, preparing for the precise moment when observation and awareness would translate into understanding, clarity, and quiet resolution. She felt the calm assurance that comes from complete comprehension, knowing that her careful attention, patience, and insight would allow her to respond with accuracy and authority, preserving both her home and the respect she had cultivated over a lifetime. Every small detail, every motion, every whispered instruction had been absorbed, catalogued, and interpreted, forming an unbroken continuum of awareness that would ensure Eleanor's ability to act with clarity, dignity, and decisive understanding when the appropriate moment arrived. The house remained active with the subtle signs of Madison's plan, yet Eleanor's composed vigilance allowed her to maintain the advantage of knowledge, control, and strategic foresight, ensuring that the eventual outcome would be both just and unambiguous. The evening had fully settled, casting a deep, warm glow throughout the house, and Eleanor remained in her position by the window, every sense attuned to the movements and interactions within the rooms. Madison and her parents continued their careful arrangement of the space, moving with quiet deliberation, unaware that their every action had been observed and recorded in meticulous detail. Eleanor sipped her tea slowly, allowing the warmth to steady her thoughts and reinforce the clarity with which she viewed the unfolding events. She noted the subtle changes in posture, the way Madison adjusted her voice to direct her parents, and the slight hesitations that betrayed underlying uncertainty despite the outward display of confidence. The arrangement of furniture, the placement of decorative items, and the small adjustments of objects provided Eleanor with a comprehensive understanding of the intent behind each movement. She considered the psychological interplay between Madison and her parents, how assumptions of authority and the perception of opportunity had guided their behavior, and how Eleanor's quiet observation allowed her to anticipate each step without intervention. The soft hum of the air conditioner and the occasional creak of the floorboards punctuated the silence, reinforcing Eleanor's awareness and focus. She reflected on the history of her home, the years of care and attention invested, the traditions maintained, and how these elements provided a grounding perspective that allowed her to interpret actions with precision and patience. Eleanor observed the subtle shifts in Madison's expressions, the micro gestures of her parents as they followed instructions, and the nuanced rhythm of the interactions, all of which contributed to a mental map of strategy and intent. Each adjustment, each minor action, each whispered instruction was catalogued with care, forming a complete understanding of the unfolding plan, allowing Eleanor to consider the most effective approach when it became necessary to respond. The fading sunlight filtered through the windows, casting gentle shadows that highlighted each corner, each surface, and each movement with clarity, allowing Eleanor to track and analyze every detail. She allowed herself a quiet smile, acknowledging the subtle advantage gained from patience, observation, and understanding, recognizing that the awareness she held gave her the power to respond with accuracy and confidence. Eleanor considered the timing and sequence of actions, the overconfidence displayed by Madison, and the assumptions that her parents were making, knowing that each element would contribute to the eventual clarity of the situation. She reflected on the importance of restraint, the ability to let events unfold naturally while maintaining full awareness, and the knowledge that the truth would become apparent without the need for immediate confrontation. The soft glow of evening provided a perfect backdrop for careful observation, illuminating details that might otherwise have gone unnoticed, and Eleanor recorded each nuance in her mind, constructing a detailed mental archive of behavior, intention, and interaction. She remained poised, her posture relaxed yet alert, allowing her to maintain a comprehensive view of the unfolding scenario while preparing for the eventual revelation of truth. Each sound, the placement of a box, the shuffle of feet, the subtle exchange of words, became part of Eleanor's understanding, adding depth and precision to the map she had been creating. She reflected on the subtle interplay of confidence, assumption, and intent, recognizing how overconfidence often reveals more than bold action, and how careful observation can uncover the full extent of plans without any need for direct interference. Eleanor continued to sip her tea, letting the familiar warmth anchor her focus as she observed every detail, translating movements and gestures into a complete narrative of intentions and likely outcomes. The house remained active with the subtle rhythms of human behavior, yet Eleanor's calm vigilance dominated the perception of the space, ensuring that every nuance was captured and understood. She imagined how the final reveal would unfold, how the collected observations would provide clarity and understanding, and how the careful balance of patience and awareness would allow her to act decisively when the appropriate moment arrived. The soft lighting, the quiet movements, the unspoken assumptions, and the deliberate actions of Madison and her parents all contributed to Eleanor's comprehensive mental record, creating the conditions for a response that would be precise, controlled, and undeniable. She remained completely still yet fully engaged, absorbing every detail with careful attention, translating each observation into insight, and ensuring that her awareness remained uninterrupted and comprehensive. Eleanor reflected on the interplay of patience, observation, and strategic understanding, recognizing that her restraint and attention to detail would ensure the truth was revealed with clarity, preserving the integrity of her home and the respect she had earned over a lifetime. The evening deepened, shadows lengthened across floors and walls, and Eleanor's quiet presence allowed her to maintain full control of awareness, tracking the unfolding actions with precision and preparing for the exact moment when accumulated understanding would allow her to act decisively, clearly, and with dignity, ensuring that every intention observed would be fully and unmistakably revealed. The night had fully settled over the house, wrapping each room in a gentle darkness punctuated only by the soft glow of the lamps and the subtle reflection of moonlight through the windows. Eleanor remained quietly in her observation spot, her posture relaxed yet every sense alert, fully aware of the movements and interactions unfolding before her. Madison and her parents had grown more comfortable as the evening progressed, moving with a calmness that Eleanor knew was grounded in their assumption of unchallenged control. Eleanor sipped her tea slowly, letting the warmth anchor her focus, and noted the subtle changes in behavior, the slight hesitations in Madison's instructions, the small but telling adjustments of her parents, each of which painted a more complete picture of intent and character. The furniture was now arranged in a manner that aligned with Madison's vision, yet Eleanor's careful observation allowed her to see not only the placement but the thought process behind each action, revealing the strategic planning that had guided the movements. The soft ticking of the clock, the distant hum of the refrigerator, and the faint settling noises of the house provided a backdrop for Eleanor's concentrated attention, allowing her to mentally catalog every detail for future clarity. She reflected on the sequence of events from the afternoon, each action and reaction, every gesture, every word, building a comprehensive understanding that would enable her to respond with precision when the moment came. Eleanor considered the interplay of confidence and assumption, the subtle ways in which Madison projected authority and relied upon compliance, and how these elements could be carefully exposed through patient observation. Each shift of a cushion, each tilt of a frame, each whispered word contributed to the mental map Eleanor had been constructing, and she felt a calm certainty in her grasp of the situation. The faint glow from the hallway lights illuminated the polished surfaces of the floors and furniture, highlighting the careful orchestration of movements and providing Eleanor with a clear and complete view of the unfolding plan. She allowed herself a measured, quiet smile, recognizing the power of patience and observation, the ability to understand fully before taking action, and the advantage that came from awareness without immediate interference. Eleanor reflected on the long history of her home, the traditions and memories embedded in each room, and how these factors enhanced her capacity to detect subtle intentions, anticipate actions, and prepare a precise response. The interactions continued, each movement and adjustment reinforcing the narrative Eleanor had built internally, a narrative that revealed the audacity, assumption, and overconfidence of those she was observing. She considered the eventual moment when the careful accumulation of observations, patterns, and cues would provide the clarity and understanding necessary to assert control, protect her home, and ensure that the intentions of others were fully understood. The evening air, carrying the faint scent of the outdoors and the quiet sounds within the house, created a serene yet tense atmosphere that reinforced Eleanor's calm vigilance. She noted the subtleties of body language, the nuances of tone, and the rhythm of speech, translating each observation into insight about intentions, priorities, and expectations. Eleanor allowed herself to relax slightly, confident in the comprehensive picture she had developed, yet remaining fully attentive, ensuring that every detail remained clear and accessible for when action would be necessary. The subtle light of the lamps cast gentle shadows, emphasizing the positions and movements of Madison and her parents. While Eleanor's mental record grew increasingly complete, each element reinforcing her understanding of the unfolding dynamics. She reflected on the value of restraint, the power of observation, and the effectiveness of allowing events to unfold naturally, knowing that her patience would ensure a decisive, measured, and indisputable understanding of the truth. Eleanor's focus remained absolute, absorbing every gesture, every direction, every subtle signal, creating a full mental archive of behavior and intent. She considered the confidence with which Madison had acted, the compliance of her parents, and the interplay between assumption and expectation that had driven their actions, recognizing how the culmination of these details would provide undeniable clarity. The house, quiet yet alive with subtle motion, served as a perfect environment for Eleanor's observation, each sound and movement contributing to a comprehensive understanding of the plan. She sipped her tea once more, feeling the warmth reinforce her focus, and allowed herself a final mental sweep of each room, noting the placement of objects, the expressions of Madison and her parents, and the sequence of interactions that had unfolded over the evening. Eleanor felt a sense of quiet assurance, the calm confidence that comes from full awareness, knowing that the careful monitoring and meticulous attention to detail had provided her with the insight, clarity, and control needed to address the situation effectively and maintain both the dignity of her home and her own authority. The night deepened, and Eleanor remained still yet fully present, absorbing every detail with patience and strategic awareness, prepared to allow the culmination of observation, understanding, and timing to provide a resolution that was complete, precise, and indisputable, ensuring that the intentions she had witnessed would be revealed fully and with clarity.